Mr. Speaker, I rise to support this motion. And first of all, let me congratulate my dear colleague, Senator Sakaja, for having done what most people would be afraid to do, to be able to visit a foreign country and to investigate circumstances that lead to Kenyans having to go through hardship, some ending up in prison because of trying to seek for greener pastures. Mr. Speaker, I've gone through the report, albeit briefly, and I looked at the observations which were made by the Committee of Labor, and I've also looked at the recommendations. And I may have a contrary view to most of my colleagues here because I've lived in the United States of America. I've lived in the US for almost 20 years. In fact, part of my family is still there, and somehow I'm still a resident. Mr. Speaker, the reward of working abroad is actually evident, both to the country that receives labor and the country that exports labor. The biggest question that we must ask ourselves today is, what is it that we need to do in order to ensure that Kenyans who live on their own volition, no one forces a Kenyan to leave this country to go to the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia to seek for greener pasture. No one forces a Kenyan to leave Kenya to go to Dubai and seek for greener pastures. It is on their own volition. Maybe because of the hardship that they go through in this country. But if we are to understand the reason as to why these Kenyans leave, maybe that is when we can be able to find a better way of resolving this problem. Mr. Speaker, I have a problem with a recommendation that attempt to suggest that as a country we should suspend any migrants from leaving this country to another country to be able to seek for greener pastures. The reason why people end up in prison, even in the United States of America, is because people engage themselves in criminal activities. I can dare say that although I sympathize and I empathize with Kenyans who have ended up in prison in Riyadh, in the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia, but I must say this: if you are a law-abiding citizen who follows the right immigration laws and you decide to migrate to another country, there's no way you'll end up in jail. There's no way you will end up suffering because you followed the right procedure. Mr. Speaker, I was listening keenly to Senator Cheruyot, and Senator Cheruyot's submission in this House today is a clear attestation or demonstration that there are countries in this world that come up with better systems of promoting their citizens who decide to migrate into other countries. The statistics that Senator Cheruyot was giving are quite, clear. The Philippines, on a yearly basis, exports 1 million Filipinos to go work abroad, skilled laborers and skilled laborers. What the Philippines have done, and which is what I expected my dear good friend Senator Sakaja to be able to do, is to sit with the International Labour Organization and try and examine what the Philippines did, how they came up with the right procedure or the policy that governs their citizens leaving the country to go work abroad. I want to encourage Senator Sakaja to look at the framework which was developed by the Philippines, working with the International Labour Organization, that manages their citizens who leave the country. Mind you, I've just indicated to you that every year there are 1 million Philippines who leave the Philippines to other countries. Even in this country, we have a lot of Philippines who come and work here. Are you asking? Is it a point of order?
Senator Olekina, do you want to be informed?
Yes,
by Senator
absolutely, absolutely.
Okay.
Mr. Speaker, I appreciate that the report could be bulky and many members have just quoted it. But what Senator Ole Kina is asking for, there is actually a case study of the Philippines within the report. That was part of our inquiry. We actually did thorough work. And there was a presentation given to us on even how they did their BLAs, their bilateral agreements, what they have, and it should be part of the annexures within this report, Mr. Speaker.
Okay, thank you. Ole Kina, you have 2 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Speaker. Mr. Speaker, I appreciate that, and I thank the good Senator of Nairobi for that very useful information. Yes, a case study. I've looked at several case studies on the Philippines. My point was that we need to look at the International Labour Organization framework on management of migrants. The Philippines, because they have actually, in fact, for the last, I can actually say there are over 10 million Philippines who work abroad. If you go to Dubai, you will find Kenyans who work there. Mr. Speaker, the last time I was in Dubai, I met with some Kenyans from Meru, or Nyeri. I met with them on the streets. And I asked them, what are you doing here? They said, we've just come to look for jobs. We are looking for jobs. So it is not true that the Kenyan government export labor. What is the fact, and this is what we need to restrict ourselves in, is that Kenyans leave this country under their own volition to go and look for jobs in other countries. What we need to do now is to balance. Since, globally, exporting labor builds your economy. It builds the Kenyan economy, and it builds also the economy of the country that you go to. We now need to look at what the International Labour Organization have done to be able to manage that, to develop policies, but suspending, or rather stopping Kenyans from going abroad to look for greener pastures when we cannot provide them jobs here. It is literally giving them a knife or a rope to hang themselves.